Okay, so I'm home all day a lot, taking care of my son, and who's 3 months old now, and it gives me a lot of time to watch TV, or at least have some TV going on in the background. Lots of other things that I don't have as much time for as I'd like to, but I am getting some TV watching done. So I've been binge watching The X-Files through Netflix, and if you are not aware, all of the X-Files, including a lot of other stuff that have more recently been brought up, which I'll touch on later, have become available streaming through Netflix, and so you can watch all the seasons of the X-Files plus the first X-Files movie. And so I'm midway through season 5 right now. I actually skipped the first 2 seasons and went ahead and just started with 3, and have been binge watching up through there, mostly because I wanted to just kind of get a handle on the mythos a little bit. And of course, X-Files has tons and tons of standalone episodes, but and I've been watching those, but I wanted to kind of get a sense of what all the mythos was, because I always liked the X-Files whenever I would watch it, but I'd only seen a handful of episodes. And anytime you'd get like a mythos episode, what I mean to say is an episode that would be, dealing with the big conspiracy of the show, I would just be completely lost. And what's funny is I've been watching all these episodes in order, and I still feel kind of lost. It's good, and it's extremely good at keeping track of its own continuity and being consistent and stuff. But a lot of times, like, an episode will be over, and I'll just scratch my head and be like, "Wow, I have no idea what that ending means." Like, I'll remember stuff that, I'll know what happened in the episode, but like a lot of times you'll have a really interesting reveal sort of ending, and then I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, the first time you ever see the what they call the black oil, which turns out, we find out later to be like, again, spoilers for anyone who wants to watch the X-Files. We find out is actually like, I guess it's supposed to be like the alien being's way of controlling people, and I'm still a little fuzzy on whether or not it's even an alien being itself, like, taking over people. I think maybe it is, and the first time we ever saw that, like, it took over, it like glazes over somebody's eyes, and then like I have no idea what's going on after that, and then it's episodes and episodes later before we actually find out what exactly is going on with that. So I then, I got through about halfway through 5 and realized that I was around the point. I'm not quite there yet, but I was around the point where they made the movie. So, the X-Files Fight the Future movie. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and watch that movie again, because I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and I remembered liking it, but it had been a while. So so then I went ahead and streamed that and watched that. And having watched so much of the X-Files lately, I now know what's going on in that movie, because it's all mythos from that show. Like, when I first saw it, I thought that like the bees and the black oil and all that stuff was all just stuff made up in the movie, and the movie actually gives away a lot that we didn't know already in the show. And it's interesting because I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that who are big X-Files fans, but it does, because, again, spoiler, you find out in the movie, I'm pretty sure for the first time ever, that aliens were definitely in this continuity on Earth long before humans were, and that's where the black oil comes from and all that. And the thing with the bees, I remember seeing that in the theater when I was a kid and being like, why bees? But like, bees are a big deal in this show. They're used to spread disease and stuff, for government conspiracies and things. So anyway, that was a lot of fun to get to go back and watch and actually kind of have a handle on what was going on. And it was neat to see Terry O'Quinn with a mustache in the first 10 minutes of that movie. He's an FBI agent who is actually, again, spoiler, is actually in league with the conspiracy people. How do you say that? Is it the conspiracy? I don't know. Anyway, and it's Terry O'Quinn. It's John Locke from Lost. So yeah, I've been doing that, and then I've been going back and rewatching some original series Star Trek lately. Of course, I run a Star Trek club, so I watch a lot of Star Trek. But lately I've been watching a lot of other things, and so I've been feeling a little bit rusty on my Trek. So and especially original series. So I did something interesting. I watched Piece of the Action and Patterns of Force back to back, which is an odd and fun experience because both of those are two of the biggest, Earth-like planet episodes of Star Trek. And Piece of the Action is the one with the gangsters, and Patterns of Force is the one with the Nazis. And they have two extremely different tones. Piece of the Action, there is definitely a comedy episode, and I would go as far as to say that it's as much of a comedy episode as Trouble with Tribbles, although a little bit more sophisticated. It's extremely clever in its plotting, and if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it, especially for people who aren't even big Star Trek fans. It's a lot of fun, and the way they portray the gangsters in that is just hysterical. It's really quite fun. But then of course Patterns of Force is an entire planet that gets Nazified, and it has a much more serious tone. Although there certainly is some humor in it, because I think they wanted to be careful and not be too dark with it. Because it's 1966 and the war had only ended less than 20 years earlier than that. So anyway, then what else did I watch? Okay, so I started watching Pushing Daisies, which is a show that I had been told by some friends for a long time I should have watched, and it got canceled after 2 seasons, and I just never Netflixed it or anything. But Netflix recently put it in streaming, and so I saw that and went, okay, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. And the only thing I had known about that show was that it was about a guy who could touch someone who had died, and then they'd be alive for a minute again, and then they'd tell them how they died. And I figured it was going to be like like a private investigator type show. Like it'd be like another or like a government agent type show. I figured it would be like another CSI or an NCIS or something like that, but like with paranormal abilities, and was shocked and pleasantly shocked and dismayed to discover that the initial premise does not do this show justice, because that's just the package. What it really is an absurd comedy done in a style that I can only describe as being a combination of Doctor Who and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and live action Tick. And when my first reaction watching the show, the first 5 minutes, I found myself going, this is a lot like live action Tick. Like, the color palette was similar, and the soundtrack was especially similar. The writing of the jokes was similar. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's not a Tick-like character in this show, but it was but like the tone and the feel was very similar. And then it gets to the credits, and the opening credits, and Barry Sonnenfeld is credited for directing and being an executive producer, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's why, because Barry Sonnenfeld directed the pilot for the live action Tick, which I think is one of its better episodes, and he was the executive producer on that show, and he also directed. He produced the Men in Black movies. I think he directed one of them, but I'm not positive on that. Not having IMDb up in front of me, I don't remember. But anyway, so I got really excited because in a way it was kind of like getting more live action Tick. And like I said, it got canceled after 2 seasons, but the first gets 9 episodes and the second gets 13. So I'm really excited to get to watch the rest of the show. It's silly, but it's really clever. And I was immediately cracking up by the name of the pilot, because a lot of shows get just called pilot, the first episode, and then they get normal episode titles after that. And this is the only show I've ever seen make fun of that. And the main character, he's not an investigator like I expected he'd be. He has the ability to bring people back from the dead for a minute, but he owns his own pie shop, which is just ludicrous but awesome. And so the first show is called Pie-Let. it's PIE with a hyphen and then LETTE. And I happen to be someone who finds puns like that amusing, especially when they're making fun of the fact that most shows are called pilot at first. So that was great. I really liked that. So anyway, I'll talk some more about that show as I'm watching it. I've only watched the first couple episodes, but the premise is neat, and it's just it's such an obscure, absurd show, and I can see why it didn't catch on, but I wish that it had, because it's neat. And then I'll just touch on some movies really quick. Of course, I watched Batman Red Hood last week, and I did a review for that on Eric's channel, Blows Himself Up Dudes. So with Eric, we did a 3-part review on that. So go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But do watch the movie if you haven't watched it, because it's great. And the one thing I'll say here is that it really is an adult animated Batman movie, and it makes the Jason Todd thing work. That's all I'll say, but I really, really loved it. Other things, I went back and rewatched Serenity because I love that movie, and King really wanted to do a review with me for a Joss Whedon theme week he did, so I was like, okay, I'll rewatch Serenity. And so he and I did a review on his channel for that, so you can go check that out. Then I've been watching some Futurama, which I was never a huge fan of, but I'm becoming more a fan of that show as I'm watching more of it. Netflix again has all of that streaming now, and I watched a couple of the movies they did. I don't know if they're just direct-to-video movies or if they were on TV first or what. I'm fuzzy on it, but I watched Bender's Big Score, and then I watched Bender's Game, and I think Bender's Game is either the most recent or nearly the most recent. It came out in 2008, I think, and they were both really fun. I like Bender's Big Score a little bit better than Bender's Game, just because I liked the social commentary in it better, because it's making fun of email and internet scam artists, as opposed to Bender's Game, which was a lot more about like big oil and stuff like that. And it was funny, but I just really enjoyed what they were making fun of more in Bender's Big Score. But Bender's Game was funny because you got to see Bender doing Dungeons and Dragons, and that was hilarious. And they had this great joke in that because I love it when Futurama takes on Star Trek, because they know Star Trek and they make really great Star Trek jokes. And they had this thing where there was this big arena and all these little tiny starships flying around fighting each other, and two of them were looked like Star Trek ships, but they were just big enough to have one of the celebrity heads in jars on top of them, and one looked like the Constitution class ship, and it was George Takei, and the other one was Scott Bakula, and it looked like the NX-01. And George Takei flies into Scott Bakula, and he says, "That's for ruining the franchise," and I just loved that. And then only other thing I really wanted to talk about this time is Toy Story 3 and Inception, because I've been people have been asking Vince and I to do reviews of both of those, and the only reason I put them off is because I don't think Vince has had a chance to see either of them, and so I didn't really want to review them without him. So I'll just talk about both of them really briefly, just to say that I saw them both. I loved them both. I think that Toy Story 3 and Inception are both the best movies this year. And you can't compare these things because they're two entirely different sorts of things, right? But Toy Story 3 I actually think is as good as the first film and better than the second. I think it's hilarious. I think that it has a really, really strong story, and when you talk about Pixar, a lot of times you talk about whether or not you cried at the end, and I will admit I got a little teary-eyed at the end of Toy Story 3. And Inception, Pixar and Chris Nolan both have the same thing in common, is that neither of them makes bad movies. But Inception, I'll just say that because there's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said about Inception, and but it's brilliant, and it has an amazing cast, a cast of people I never thought I'd see all acting together, and the ending is wonderfully ambiguous, and people keep arguing about whether or not the whole movie's a dream or whether or not the end of it is a dream, yada yada yada. What I love is that there is so much evidence at the end for both theories that he's awake or he's not awake, that it's fostering all of this conversation and it's making people think. And it's a brilliant movie because it's making people think.